My name is Thea, and I'm 31 years old. For 14 months, I poured everything I had into planning my wedding. Every decoration, every reservation, and every little detail came from money I earned myself. I spent weekends working as a waitress and took on freelance graphic design projects late into the night because I was determined not to rely on my parents for a single cent. More than anything, I'd wanted my wedding day to belong to me alone, untouched by the favoritism that had followed my family for as long as I could remember. I thought I had finally created something that couldn't be overshadowed. I was wrong. Only 3 days before the ceremony, my world shifted with one message. I was sitting on the bathroom floor during my final dress fitting when my phone buzzed. I opened a text from my mother, expecting another question about the schedule or the guests. Instead, I found words that I don't think I'll ever forget. She explained that my brother Desmond's upcoming business trip to Singapore was far more important than what she dismissed as my little party. She and my father had already booked flights, so they could accompany him to the airport instead of attending my wedding. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, hoping another message would appear. Maybe she would say she was joking. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd explain that something unexpected had happened. I waited nearly 10 minutes, but nothing else came. Then my father responded. After spending more than a year, promising he would be the one to walk me down the aisle, all he added to the conversation was a simple thumbs-up emoji, as though that single tap somehow settled everything. Moments like that weren't new to me. Growing up, I had always been the child whose accomplishments quietly disappeared into the background. Desmond's trophies filled the shelves in our house, his education was supported without question, and every ordinary achievement of his was celebrated as though it were extraordinary. Meanwhile, when I earned a full scholarship to a state university entirely through my own hard work, my mother's first reaction wasn't congratulations. She asked why I hadn't applied to a school with a more impressive reputation. Eventually, I stopped chasing their approval because I realized I would never win that competition. Instead, I focused on building a life that depended on my own determination rather than their recognition. Everything changed when I met Rowan. 2 years earlier, I had signed up for a pottery class on a whim, simply looking for a new hobby. Rohan, he happened to be there, and from our very first conversation, he treated me like I was someone worth listening to. Around him, I never felt overlooked. He had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the room without even trying. He proposed. He chose the hiking trail we'd explored together countless times. He knelt at the exact place where we'd once spent hours talking about our dreams, our future, and the kind of life we wanted to build together. Planning our wedding became one of the happiest experiences of my life because, for the first time, I truly felt like someone's priority. That was exactly why my parents' decision hurt so deeply. On the morning of the wedding while I was getting ready, my aunt unknowingly confirmed what I had hoped wasn't true. She sent me a photo from the airport. There were my mother and father smiling comfortably in the lounge, with Desmond standing proudly between them holding his boarding pass. 4 hours remained before my ceremony. I had no one to walk me down. The aisle. My wedding coordinator, Odalis, immediately noticed the color drain from my face as I looked at the picture. Calm and observant, she gently asked what had happened. After I explained everything, she didn't waste time offering sympathy. Instead, she offered an idea. For the previous 3 weeks, the venue's gardens had been undergoing restoration under the supervision of a landscape architect named Julian Thorne. He was a widower who had worked closely with the venue staff while Rowan and I finalized our wedding plans. According to Odalis, Julian had mentioned several times how impressed he was that I had handled every detail of the wedding myself without complaining or giving up. Then she asked a question I never expected to hear. Would I like her to ask Julian if he'd be willing to walk me down the aisle? At first I actually laughed, that the idea sounded impossible. How could I ask someone I had only known for a few weeks to stand in for my own father during one of the biggest moments of my life? But sometimes pride has to make room for reality. Less than an hour later, I found myself sitting across from Julian inside the venue's greenhouse. As I explained what had happened, he listened with complete attention, never interrupting, never looking uncomfortable. When I finally finished, he didn't hesitate. He simply smiled and said yes. He told me that family isn't defined only by blood, but by the people who choose to stand beside you when it matters most. If I would allow it, he said, it would be an honor to accompany me a year earlier. I never could have imagined walking toward my future beside a man I'd only known for 3 weeks, yet somehow it became one of the most meaningful moments of my life. As we walked together down the aisle, I wasn't forcing the careful smile every bride practices for photographs. For the first time in years, I smiled naturally because I was surrounded by people who genuinely wanted to celebrate with me. My best friend recorded the entire entrance, intending to upload it later as a simple wedding memory for our close friends and relatives. Neither of us had any idea what that short video would become. By Monday morning, it had surpassed 1 million views online. Thousands of strangers filled the comments after reading the brief explanation attached to the clip. Many described it as one of the most heartbreaking yet uplifting wedding moments they had seen in a long time. My phone never stopped ringing. Throughout that single day, my mother called me 61 times. Each voicemail sounded more desperate than the one before it, then the final message arrived. Her voice was trembling. She explained that my father's boss had come across a viral wedding video online. The moment he saw the man escorting me down the aisle, he recognized him immediately. According to my mother, my father had been ordered to report to his boss's office first thing Monday morning because there was something about Julian Thorne. That my father had never expected anyone at work to notice. Her final voicemail wandered through nervous explanations before finally reaching the point. And what she revealed next would change everything.